Many people want better relationships with their partner, children or friends, but find this hard to do. Which begs the question, why? Surely, it's not beyond the pay grade of our hearts and minds to have more productive, enjoyable relationships. So, let's have some fun exploring this matter to see if we can gain some insight into this. The topic up for discussion for September 2019 is intelligent enough to invent smartphones, but too dumb to have smart relationships. So, is figuring out how the likes of smartphones work relatively easy when compared to understanding the feelings and instincts that condition how we behave within our relationships? I think most would say it is, which gives insight into why our ability as a species to create enjoyable, productive relationships, well, to put it mildly, sucks a little. Because if we were good at creating ideal relationships, there would be no wars. People's love life relationships would always have fairy tale endings, and the beautiful dreams people have for the relationships with their children, parents, siblings, and friends would be easily realized. Now, given this, isn't it time for us as a species to upgrade our relationship skills? But then, as we all know, that's easier said than done, and recent scientific discoveries gives us insight into why. They show that we humans can only consciously focus on a small portion of all the stimuli around us at any one point in time. And so while our conscious mind is paying attention to this and that, the unconscious parts of our brain works in the background deciding what we will do. Scientists now know through conducting MRI scans that the unconscious parts of the brain decides what a person will do when presented with a basic task up to 7 seconds before the person consciously makes the decision to do it. Think about the implications of that for a moment, because this suggests that our unconscious mind is processing what is happening around us, and we respond to life according to what it concludes we should do. Explaining how this works within the context of everyday life, neuroscientist John Dylan Haynes puts it this way. When we walk along a busy street and we have to dodge cars or people or objects, a lot of this just happens automatically. We don't have to think about it. He says these unconscious routines take over a lot of the chores of our day-to-day life. Now, given what he is saying, I have a question for you. To what extent does your unconscious mind control how you handle your relationships? Think about it. What primarily governs your behavior towards your partner, children, or friends? Is it your thoughts or is it your feelings? And how often do you instinctively react to what they say and do rather than responding from an informed understanding of the situation at hand? Most people who I have asked this question tell me that it is their instincts and feelings that primarily determine how they respond, which suggests that it is their unconscious mind that is primarily dictating how they behave within the dynamic of their relationships. So, for people to upgrade their relationship skills, they would need to understand their unconscious mind's perspective on relationships and how it handles the ins and outs of everyday relationship behavior. In my September webinar, this and more was discussed, and here are some of the highlights starting with the introductory video showed at the beginning of the webinar. All right, so let's discuss this. Do you believe your partner should agree with your perspective and behave as you want them to? Anyone?
I'd say yes.
So, does this mean they should do what you want and be who you want them to be 100% of the time? Maybe not 100%? Then how about 90 or 80% of the time?
Um, well, well, it depends. If it's the things that's important to me, then yes.
All right, let's go with 50%. Let's say they are happy to be who you want them to be 50% of the time. Is that all right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Look, that would be fair. That would be fair.
Okay, but for that to be fair, you would need to be who they wanted you to be and do what they wanted 50% of the time. How does that sit with you?
Oh, okay. Actually, well, now you put it that way. No, that doesn't sound. No, I don't like the idea of that.
So, so tell me, why do people who subliminally believe that their partner should be doing what they want take issue with their other half when they expect the same of them? Isn't it because we unconsciously believe that those who love us should be happy to do what we want and be who we want them to be? But being an unconscious idea, we tend to be oblivious to the fact that our unconscious mind even thinks this way. And this explains why we humans find it easier to find fault with our partner when they don't do for us what we think they should compared to those we have no intimate relations. This unconscious pattern of thinking tends to spawn biased logic that directs us to conclude that we are mainly right and that our partner is mainly wrong, which only creates more problems for us. Now tell me, do you like being told by your partner that they are right and you are wrong just because you won't do what they want or be who they want you to be?
No, it's no. That's unpleasant.
So let's shed some light on this with a role play, where a couple try to convince each other that they are right and their partner is wrong regarding how tidy the family house should be. For one partner, having a tidy house is important, and so comes it around 2 on their priority list of things to attend to in their day. For their partner, it's a low priority, so comes it around about number 9 for them. Now to kick things off, I will play the person for who having a tidy house is a low priority. And who would like to play the role of the person for whom having a tidy house is very important? Anyone?
Yes. Um, yeah. So okay. So I've come home and the house is a mess. So the house is a mess, and it's really stressing me out. Like, couldn't you have cleaned the house today?
I could have.
Well, why not? You knew I was coming home. Why didn't you clean it?
Okay, honey. Look, you're good at telling me how I should behave and what I should do. But when I start to tell you what you should be doing for me, you don't want to know. Look, if you were happy to do what I wanted, then I'd feel more happy about keeping a tidy house for you.
Well, but you know that it's important to me. Like, we shouldn't have to have an argument about it. It's just something that we know it helps the house run properly. There's a lot that we're both doing. If we can keep the house tidy, it's going to be a lot less stressful for all of us.
Wow. Less stressful for all of us, you say? Let me just explain what happens when you get uptight and Nazi-like about the tidiness of the house. It stresses us all out.
So if you tidy the house, I won't be stressing you out.
Look, I want you to loosen up. I want you to be able to deal with an untidy house. That's not only going to be good for all of us at home, but it's also going to help you.
That a tidy house is going to help me.
Yeah, because that's what you believe. You haven't really experimented with how you could operate in an untidy house. You're just locked into the idea of how this has to be. And if I disagree, then you're going to create World War III.
Well, there is no other way. It's really stressful. I just, I can't think straight. It's it's the house is dirty. I can't do it. I can't do it.
There are other ways. It's all about perspective. You have your perspective and I have mine.
Well, that's the problem.
Yeah, a difference in perspective. And yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. You had parents that were a little anal about tidy houses, and how did you like that when you were growing up?
I did, but I can see why that was a good idea.
Yes, of course you can, and I can see why it was such a bad idea, because an untidy house stresses you off your nut, and you can't relax and you can't enjoy life.
Well, I don't want to always be on your case, but I would like you to, to think, well, if you care about me and you know that this is important to me,
Yeah.
then is it that hard to just do it?
If you really cared about me, you wouldn't stress me with your Nazi regimes. What you are doing is telling me how I should be and what I should do for you. And when I say, well, you should get over your stress reactions to an untidy house and do what I want you to do, you tell me to F off. How fair is that?
That's right. That is what I'm going to say. I don't.
That's right.
Okay, all right. So it's okay. So I'm getting then that it's not fair. Well, it's not fair on either side. It's not fair on either side.
Okay, so what do we do?
I don't know. Not in the bloody house.
I talked earlier about how our unconscious minds makes decisions for us, citing the latest scientific research that shows this. Its logic has been primarily shaped by long-forgotten personal experiences and those we have inherited from our parents, their parents and ancestors. And these experiences form the basis upon which our unconscious mind makes decisions. So in my wrap-up for the month of September, I want to talk about some of the unconscious logic or thought processes that govern how we deal with our relationships and decide if our unconscious is being dumb or smart in the conclusions it comes to, and if dumb, explore smarter alternatives. To do this, I will start by asking the first of three questions. Question 1. Is your unconscious being smart or dumb when it tells you that your partner should be doing what you want and be the person you want them to be, but then adds, you don't have to do the same for them? Now let's explore why our unconscious mind pushes us to become frustrated and angry with our partner when they won't do what we want or be who we want them to be. To do this, let's start by exploring why this happens. If I was to say to you, it is because our unconscious mind perceives this lack of cooperation as a threat to our well-being, what would you say? Would you say this idea has merit, or would you say it's a little far-fetched? If you think it is far-fetched, then consider this. What happens to people when their partner won't behave as they want or do what they want regarding family finances, the tidiness of the family home, or for how their children should be raised? They become stressed, don't they? Now, why do they become stressed? Well, isn't it because their partner's behaviour poses a threat to their well-being? Think about it. If you had a financially irresponsible partner, wouldn't they pose a threat to your financial well-being? And so likely trigger the release of the likes of stress hormones into your bloodstream, conditioning how you behave towards them. Of course, when living with such a person, you don't consciously join the dots and say to yourself, when my partner is financially irresponsible, it stresses me, and so pushes me to attack them, verbally or otherwise, to try and stop them from doing me financial harm. But the unconscious part of the brain does recognize the threat, and so releases the likes of stress hormones into your bloodstream, stimulating you to attack them. You see the same play out when partners are caught in conflict over how tidy the family house should be. We role-played this in my last webinar. The partner who does not like being judged by their friends or neighbours as untidy, or who finds it hard to function in an untidy house, will unconsciously see their untidy partner as a threat to their well-being and attack them for not being tidy enough, rather than thinking, when my partner leaves mess around, the unconscious part of my brain recognizes this as a threat to my well-being, and so triggers the release of stress hormones into my bloodstream, pushing me to attack them. Now, if it was THC that was released into your bloodstream when you were under threat and not stress hormones, the mess would not likely matter. And you might say, well, amid such mess, hey honey, let's munch together. Or you may share some profound realization like, a couple that laughs together stays together. But stress hormones don't put you in that frame of mind. They stimulate you to attack your partner or emotionally withdraw from them. Which leads me to my next question. Question 2. Is your unconscious being smart or dumb when it pushes you on a regular basis to use fight or flight psychology to get your partner to behave as you want them to? Now, science tells us that stress hormones prime us to fight or flee that which is a threat. And while flight mode pushes us to flee that which poses a threat, fight mode pushes us to attack it. Now, within the dynamic of love-life relationships, it tends to play out like this. In flight mode, partners withdraw. They become less communicative, emotionally withdrawn, and tend to be less intimate. In fight mode, they don't withdraw. They instead take their partner to task when they won't behave as they want regarding something they consider important. The partner being attacked will instinctively see their partner's behavior as a threat to their well-being and so become stressed, stimulating them to fight back. And we all know how that tends to work out, don't we? The couple start attacking each other using biased logic, coloured by me-centric thinking, to convince themselves and their partner why they are right and why their partner is wrong. And if that doesn't work, they often resort to using put-downs, verbal aggression, and sometimes physical force to try and make each other behave and do what they want them to. In such situations, one partner subliminally fears that if their other half does not do what they want or be who they want, then their well-being will be compromised or disadvantaged. Their other half subliminally fears that if they do what their partner wants or be who they want them to be, then their well-being will be compromised or disadvantaged. Does that feel familiar? The more a couple unconsciously feels that each poses a threat to the other's well-being, the more the atmosphere of their relationship will be charged with stress, galvanizing them into using fight or flight psychology to settle their relationship disputes. When gripped by such stress, neither party consciously recognizes that it is fight or flight behavior that is primarily causing their grief. Which leads me to my last question. Question 3. Wouldn't it be smart to develop the skill to override the directives of your unconscious mind when it doesn't understand what's good for you and your relationships? Like, for instance, the skill to override unnecessary unconscious fight or flight alerts coming out of our unconscious and reach into our psyche for a different psychology to use as a mainstay for handling our relationships. Like, for instance, the psychology of empathy or compassion. It is one of a number we could use to do this. Empathy, like stress, conditions how we behave and react towards one another. But unlike stress, it helps us to be more generous and caring and enables us to be in touch with what others are going through. When a couple's relationship is nestled within an atmosphere of mutual empathy instead of mutual threat, the positives are many. For starters, they tend to have a greater level of tolerance, understanding, and compassion for one another. Now, I can hear some of you saying, yep, all good in theory, but that's not how life works. Look, I understand why the idea of being more empathic can be unappealing and even stressful, especially when your unconscious says, if you show more compassion towards your partner, you're likely to become a loser. The experience of becoming more compassionate and then being taken advantage of is often painful. It is something many of us have experienced, and this is why the fear of this happening is alive and well within our unconscious. But why allow such fear to negatively impact our capacity to be compassionate? Wouldn't it be smarter to upskill our ability to deny others the capacity to exploit or take advantage of our compassionate nature? As this would allow us to be a more compassionate person without becoming a loser. This is a topic I will be canvassing in the next few months. Now that's a wrap for the topic. Intelligent enough to invent smartphones, but too dumb to have smart relationships. Take care. See you next time.